Well, welcome back. I appreciate the folks that have listened or viewed, I guess I should say, the first video, and here's the second. My intention is to go from general to specific, although Lord knows I could go all over the place. The main thing is that I cover the information that's helping. And if you have any suggestions, or if you'd like to tell your story, please get in touch with me, ron.moore.writer@gmail.com or 702-601-4502. I'd certainly like to get your feedback as well as your suggestions. My my story and my what I know is based on my experience in Las Vegas for the most part. The experiences I've had in other places was well, I could go into some of that, I suppose. So today I'd like to talk about being homeless on the street versus being homeless in a shelter. Now, I was homeless on the street in Reno and Los Angeles, and I can tell you Los Angeles is no joke. You know, the first time you walk through Skid Row, the first thing you think of is, I'm not going to survive this. And the second thing you think of is, I hope I can find my way out of this part of town. But in fact, LA wasn't so bad. I stayed on a park bench at night and slept there, sitting up, and the cops never bothered me. And during the day, I first went to the main library downtown, and then came back to the park where I was, so I could sit at that park until they closed, and then go to the bus stop just outside the park. So it was, I won't say it was easy, but I would say that in terms of having the library having a comfortable space to be during the day, having a handicap stall in the bathroom that even had a sink so that it was easy to quickly freshen up without making a spectacle of yourself. And the social services were very easy to apply for and to get. And the other thing that was really, I can't say it was unique in my experience, and that's that they had toilets all around town. These big round bathrooms, basically, and they were self-cleaning. So if you went into one of those, then you shut the door, and then it cleaned after every visit. Not that doesn't mean it was really clean all the time, but at least it was somewhat clean. But it was better than relieving yourself outside. So now to go to Vegas, so I never stayed in a shelter, by the way, and anywhere else but Vegas. So in my Vegas experience, I didn't spend a lot of time sleeping outside. At times they were not happy and didn't want you out there. At other times they left you alone. I found a spot by the library on a ramp that went up to a walkway that went over the road. In other words, you didn't cross at the road, you went on like a little pedestrian bridge. So I would go about halfway up that ramp, and that's where I would hang out. And that was the spot where I hung out before the library opened when I was in the shelter. You know, the only problem with that, other than the usual risks with police and other people maybe wanting to steal your stuff, was that if it doesn't rain much in Vegas, but when it does and you're homeless, you most definitely feel it. And I have slept on a wet sidewalk, and that's the sort of thing that really reminds you of where you are in life. It's not pleasant at all. But yet, if you get through the night and you actually get some sleep, you know, that really is the main objective. Now, currently in Las Vegas, they are, in a couple of weeks, proposing a bill to make it illegal to sleep outside in public spaces. So I plan to go to that council meeting and speak up because, in a sense, if you make it illegal for the homeless to sleep outside, then you are making it essentially illegal for the homeless to sleep. And it just doesn't, it's just another way for the cops to play whack-a-mole and for the homeless to be the moles. I don't think cops, for the most part, uh, like that duty. And if they're cranky towards us, I think it's just because they don't want to have to do this to us, or they don't want to have to deal with us. Typically, when they talk to us, it's through a microphone. They don't even roll down the windows. So the other way that cops hassle you here is a $160 jaywalking ticket. So if you jaywalk around the area of the shelter where there's no traffic, it doesn't matter, young or old, disabled, they will write you up and they don't give warnings. So and of course we've had our areas like Skid Row where folks would put up tents. And from time to time the cops would come by with a little mini bulldozer and a dump truck, and they were under orders just to basically steal everybody's stuff. So there's that disruption factor when you're outside, and you can't really predict what's going to happen to you, even if there are occasionally people that drive by and stop and give you something or are nice to you. Now, why would somebody sleep outside versus sleeping in a shelter? Well, there's a few reasons, I believe. One is that they just don't care to abide by the rules of the shelter. They find it too limiting. You'll find that not everybody, of course, I don't ever want to generalize, but the people that I knew that moved out of the shelter to sleep on the street did it because they wanted to drink or they wanted to use. But the other thing doesn't involve any addiction is simply that the shelter you're in there 14 hours. You don't have the freedom to go outside to eat or to get a smoke or anything. So there is a certain amount of freedom, especially if you're with a group of people, but it's not the safest or most secure way to go. Now, we do have something now called the courtyard, where you have security and you're sleeping outside, but they give you a little mat, and so it's kind of between a shelter and sleeping outside. But as we all know, everything is limited by the resources. There's much more need than there are resources. If there are anywhere from 7 to 11,000 homeless at any given time in Las Vegas, there aren't even 1,000 beds. So at some point, it's also supply and demand. Now, my experience at the shelter wasn't so good, but I went there. But the typical day for a shelter homeless person this is Catholic Charities, so I can't speak to the others. But as far as I know, it's the largest shelter, and they don't turn anyone away. The only restriction is that you get a breathalyzer on your way in. If you blow up positive on any level, they're going to not let you stay, or sometimes if they're in a good mood, they'll let you sit down, drink some water and try again in an hour or two. But with the shelter experience, number one, you're having to turn in your property. You can't take your property upstairs with you. In my case, ultimately, my laptop was broken in the storage, which I'm still not over, and I'm still angry about. Now, once you get upstairs, once you go through screening, you go upstairs, you get a blanket and a sheet. You go upstairs to a bunk. You got upper bunks and lower bunks, and you hopefully can develop some sort of a routine so that if you can't live comfortably, you can at least live predictably. So that was certainly my goal. Although they don't let you save beds, you've got to. I was lucky in a sense because I had a disabled card, which meant I got in at 3. Now, so for my typical day, I would line up for the night shelter, turn in my bag, and go in at 3. So I had plenty of beds to choose from. The other guys would have to go off property and line up on Main Street to enter at 6. And the police would only allow them to stand in line at 30 or later. So if they would get hassled every day if you try to get in line early. So, you play this whole game where you're kind of walking up and down the street or trying to look like you're walking just to avoid any trouble. So now those folks, the 6 o'clock folks, go through the same, the same process that everybody goes through, but at some point the beds are going to be full, and then you're turned away. So it's not 100%, but you sort of learn how to adapt. Once you're upstairs in the shelter, you're not allowed to eat. You can't take pen and pencil, anything like that, and you're not allowed to go outside. So basically, for those 3 o'clock folks, that meant that from 3 o'clock until 6 o'clock in the morning, we didn't eat. And I'll talk about that and how that affected my health some other time. I don't want to go too long here and have you lose interest or just lose patience with me. But anyway, of course you can leave anytime you want. You just can't come back. So, if you want to leave at 2 in the morning, and some guys will leave at 3 o'clock or so, then more power to you, but you can't come back in. So in a sense, then you're sort of, out walking the streets. And it's not that safe out there to be just walking around. So at 6 a.m., the guards come in and kick you out, and you get in a long line to pick up your bag from the night shelter storage, and then you go get in another line for day shelter storage. And and then if you wish, you can go inside space allowing and stay day. Now the lunch, the one free meal is at 10 o'clock. You have that small meal. You wait in line a long time for that. And then at 3 o'clock you go back upstairs. So where the shelter is risky is the exposure to disease, infection, that sort of thing. A lot of us aren't exactly terribly healthy, and some of us are contagious. I had my wallet stolen the first week, so you have to learn to really protect yourself. The lights are on until 11. So if you want to sleep, you're going to sleep with the lights on. People are talking, it's loud, you can imagine, and you probably know all about that. I have some stories to tell, but I won't take up the time here to tell them. But I can tell you that I understand why people choose the street over the shelter and feel safer in the street than in the shelter. So that's the basic choice you have as a homeless person. And you have to just make your choices and consider the consequences and consider the risks and hope for the best. When that sun comes up, you're back to your routine. So I'll leave it at that for today because I've gone pretty long. But again, I want to hear from you. So if you have a story you want to tell, if you have an issue you raise, especially if it's an issue that's in your town is different than my experience, because different towns have different ways of dealing with the homeless, some better than others. So give me a call at 702-601-4502 or email at ron.moore.rider@gmail.com. So until next time, I'll sign off and wish you a safe evening and a safe night.